you going to believe? Me or your lying eyes?
Yeah.
That young lady could have been anybody in this audience.
Well, that's...
It doesn't matter what, forget color, forget it. It could have been anybody. And if they can do this to her, they can do it to you, too.
Peggy Flanagan, the Lieutenant Governor of Minnesota, encouraged people to put their bodies on the line.
This woman was part of a group of people who they train to try to be ICE interrupters. Mm-hmm. And what they try to do is observe what ICE is doing, film them, and try to use their white privilege, to be honest.
I just want to say, I don't know why she was, from my understanding, she had just dropped her kid off. We know what we saw. So how can people, it's a dumb question, but I'm going to ask it anyway, watch the same footage and see things so differently?
The ladies of The View attempt to gaslight the nation once again, this time about the ICE-involved shooting in Minneapolis. Let's get into it.
It's just so interesting to me. You know, how can, I don't know, there are a zillion perspectives of this.
Yeah.
And it's like that old joke, you know? A woman comes home, walks into her bedroom, hears noises happening, walks in, there's her husband having sex with somebody else. And she goes, oh my, what are you doing? I can't believe you're doing this. And he said, what are you talking about? Look at what you're doing. You're having sex with this woman. And he says, who are you going to believe? Me or your lying eyes?
Yeah.
That's what this is.
Yeah.
You know what you saw.
Yeah.
You know what you saw. Now, you can keep saying she was aggressively running people up. She wasn't. We know what we saw. So how can people, it's a dumb question, but I'm going to ask it anyway, watch the same footage and see things so differently?
Whoopi don't want you to believe your lying guys and wants you to just go along with her narrative. But here's what they're not telling you.
It's my fault. The de facto wife of the woman who was killed by ICE said, it's my fault. Quote, I made her come down here to confront agents, as she breaks down in harrowing footage. Now, I want to make sure this is very clear. She said, quote, I made her come down here. Now, there are a lot of questions around why this woman from out of state was in Minnesota in the first place. Why was her wife outside of the vehicle filming while she obstructed law enforcement? And if this woman was just trying to flee, why was she leaving her wife behind? Now, by all means, there are arguments for these things. She's a protester. You're allowed to protest. Driving from Colorado to Minnesota is kind of weird, but it's allowed. Maybe she was just trying to evade law enforcement after committing a misdemeanor or felony and was willing to leave her wife behind to escape the police. That's why her wife was left outside.
So after this unfortunate incident occurred, Good's partner admitted that the whole thing was her fault because she's the one who made her go down there. Now, to me, that statement alone destroys the entire narrative that The View is trying to push. But let's get back to the old hens, because Sarah attempts to go off script by actually admitting that Renee Good was, quote-unquote, adding to the tinderbox by obstructing ICE.
But it is a reminder, as this is happening in our country, that we have to have peaceful protests, because I think any time you have someone that is obstructing or cutting people off, she does not deserve to be dead, but that is also creating the situation of a tinderbox. And this is why we're seeing more shootings right now, is these legal watchers step back, record everything, get it all down. But the fact that she was cutting off the road also contributed to the heat of this situation. We've got to remain peaceful. You can leave no room for error on this.
I just want to say, I don't know why she was, from my understanding, she had just dropped her kid off.
Well,
and was
the
trying
videos have
to
now
get...
revealed that her partner and her were coming to watch these or slow up the ICE. They want to notify the public the ICE officers are coming. So she meant to park that way.
And there were cars. There were cars that were going around around her car.
Did you notice how Whoopi still attempts to gaslight the audience by continuing on with her narrative that she was just some mom dropping her kid off while intentionally leaving out the 5-hour detour after doing so? I'm sorry, but it's lies and manipulation tactics like this that are making it more and more dangerous for our federal officers to do their job. And you're probably asking yourself how we got here. Well,
it's a tragedy that Renee Good is dead, and we should all mourn it. We should all mourn it. We also should look back what went wrong but way before that. Peggy Flanagan, the Lieutenant Governor of Minnesota, encouraged people to put their bodies on the line.
Our neighbors are being disappeared. P.S. Without due process, it is just called kidnapping. Then show up and use your voice. Put your body on the line.
That is irresponsible. Democrats who are encouraging people to obstruct law enforcement, they're putting them in harm's way with their rhetoric, and it's wrong. Republicans shouldn't do it. Democrats shouldn't do it. We also have a problem that the Minneapolis police are not allowed to do crowd control. The encounter between Renee Good and those ICE officers shouldn't have happened. Minneapolis police should have been there as a buffer, but we don't have it because Minneapolis ordinances prohibit them from even being there when there's ICE in coordination. We have to change this. We have to have, Christine Ohm said it this morning, state and local officials need to help ICE do their job, not encourage people to stop them.
This woman was part of a group of people who they trained to try to be ICE interrupters. And what they try to do is observe what ICE is doing, film them, and try to use their white privilege, to be honest. They're mainly white people.
Which is what we ask.
Which is what we ask them to do, right?
Yeah.
Because black people, like, we can't put our bodies on the line because cops will shoot us. And so the presumption had been, particularly a white woman, because remember, part of the rationale for doing this with ICE is to save white women, pristine white women, from being ravaged by, criminal brown men. So white women, have been taking the lead in being the ones to step.
So yeah, as I mentioned previously, this woman is a victim, absolutely. But not in the sense the mainstream is painting her out to be, but a victim of her own ignorance. Now, a segment is never complete without Sunny's legal opinion. So let's hear what the former federal prosecutor has to say.
But let me say this about this killing. This was an unlawful killing. It was against DOJ policy to shoot at a vehicle that's leaving the scene. It's against the Supreme Court ruling in 1985, that sort of deadly use of force in shooting at a vehicle. So we all know that it's unlawful, regardless of whether or not you believe she was an agitator, regardless of whether or not you believe she was in the way. The bottom line is the officer's actions were unlawful. That was an unlawful killing. It was illegal. From a legal perspective, that's very black and white for me.
From a legal perspective, on July 23rd, 2020, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz actually signed into law the Minnesota Statute 609.066 that states, if a driver accelerates towards an officer standing in front of a vehicle, this creates an immediate life-threatening danger. The officer doesn't need to wait until impact. They can act based on the apparent intent and proximity. So once again, this is just more proof that these people have no idea how the real world works. They're so used to being coddled and allowed to get away with everything that they've allowed themselves to be completely brainwashed. And just listen, as Whoopi and the Hens want to make it clear that what happened to Renee could happen to any of you. How is this not a psychological operation?
When I looked at the video from several different angles, which is what lawyers are trained to do, I saw an unlawful killing. I think that's very clear. And I think we need to be at the point in this country that we call a thing and stop listening to propaganda and being Orwellian in terms of not believing what your eyes are seeing. You must believe what your eyes see. People
are taking to this. This is what
they are believing
for me.
it
This
now,
is what is really gives me great hope. People are starting to recognize from wherever they voted from that something is terribly wrong.
I agree.
And it makes me
Feel better?
Feel like I can take a breath, because for a long time it felt like that people just thought we were, just talking to waste air. But people are seeing things because everyone is affected by this. That young lady could have been anybody in this audience.
Well,
it doesn't matter forget color, forget it. It could have been anybody. And if they can do this to her, they can do it to you too.
That's right. But can I make this one point, though? Because I think it's important for the people to understand what the law is here. In 1985, the Supreme Court in Tennessee versus Garner made it very clear that you cannot use deadly force to shoot at a moving vehicle with an unarmed person in it. That is the law of the land, or it was when I went to law school.
Yes. Yes.
And the other thing I think you mentioned about DOJ policies, you cannot, DOJ's own use of force policy prohibits shooting at a moving car unless there is no other reasonable means of defense. Everyone should look at that video and understand that when that woman went in reverse, and then moved away from the officers.
Say it again. Say that
she
again.
went in reverse and then moved to the right, away from the officers. All that officer needed to do was move out of the way. That is, under DOJ's own use of force policy, another reasonable means of defense.
Well, and by stepping in front of the vehicle, they already made that a likely ending.
And rather than doing that and stepping from the vehicle, he shot 3 times and then did not give aid. So that legally, under Supreme Court precedent, is an unlawful killing, okay? Unlawful.
Stop gaslighting us. We can see what happened.
Just one last thing, sorry. In the last 4 months alone, ICE officers have fired on at least 9 people in 5 states and D.C. And in all of the individuals targeted in those shootings were in vehicles, and they have claimed self-defense. No one has been charged. So when you are out there peacefully protesting, which is your right under the Constitution, even if you're in a vehicle, please, please be careful, because this is what's happening in this country right now.
Just know that anything can happen now.
So, Sunny repeatedly stated that this was an unlawful shooting. She did not allege it was unlawful or dispute the matter. She didn't even bother to mention that it was under investigation. No, she confidently stated her claim as fact, as if she's suddenly the final authority and expert on use of force law. How reckless, because in reality, self-defense, especially for law enforcement, hinges on whether there was a reasonable perception of imminent danger at the moment force was used. Courts have repeatedly ruled that vehicles used in a threatening manner qualify as deadly force. Officers are not required to wait until they're crushed, pinned, or killed before responding. And either Sunny knows this and is choosing to ignore it, or she's just ignorant and hopes the audience is too and won't question it. I feel like this segment is a great example of how these harpies are only interested in one thing, which is controlling the narrative. Did you notice how there was no analysis, facts, or even context? Just a bunch of emotional manipulation. It's like anything they can say or do to gaslight the public, they'll say or do. For example, let's start with something that shouldn't be in any way controversial, but somehow is. That a vehicle is without a doubt a deadly weapon. That's not an opinion or even political. That's just reality. If you hit someone with a car or attempt to hit someone with a car, that is considered a deadly assault. Period. The law recognizes it as such, common sense recognizes it as such, and only people who live in a fantasy world choose to pretend otherwise. Like the cackling hens on The View. You see, they want you to believe this was some innocent passive moment where everything just kind of happened to her. That she was just there, just trying to leave, just a mom, and that what happened to this woman could happen to any of us. Yes, of course, if any of us tried to run over an officer with a vehicle, it absolutely could happen to any of us. But we all know that's not what Whoopi was implying. And yes, this incident was absolutely tragic. But the way they're framing this is so dishonest, and they know it. Why are they ignoring the fact that this woman was ordered out of her vehicle more than once? And yet she chose to disobey lawful orders and instead follow the orders of her partner, who told her to drive, baby, drive, which sadly turned out to be a fatal decision. This was not an accident. She did not faint behind the wheel, nor did her car malfunction. No. A horrible, tragic decision was made. She had the choice to put the vehicle in park and comply with officers, like every law-abiding citizen does. But instead, she chose not to do that. So I think that fact alone completely destroys their narrative. Why wouldn't they mention that? Oh yeah, because if they actually acknowledge the details, then they'll have to admit what they so desperately want to avoid, which is the fact that Renee's death was a result of her own actions. That this wasn't something that just happened to her, that bad choices were made. Not only bad choices, but dangerous ones. And those choices put lives at risk, including her own. But then again, that goes against their narrative, doesn't it? So instead, they resort to manufacturing outrage and fear-mongering.